Alright, this should be the last video before I drop the cab. And I'm going to be talking about the transmission and how that ended up getting hooked up to the transfer case, and kind of talk about how it connects to the Dt466. Start at the front here with the connection to the Dt466. I got lucky when I bought my engine. It had all the right flywheels and adapters and rings to hook to the Allison 2000. I believe it was hooked to one of the earlier, like MT 345, or I can't even remember what the number is. But a manual non-electric transmission. It was an Allison, but it had everything it needed to hook up. So I got lucky there, and I can't share a whole lot of information because basically I didn't have to research any of it. What I have here is for the shift cable is a bracket for an F650. There were F650s that came with Cummins diesels and Allison transmissions, and so that is the appropriate bracket to use the Ford shift cable. However, the shift cable for the F350 is too short to reach that bracket with the transmission being moved back. So I've also purchased the F650 cable, and that's the part number right there, YC3Z-7A 650 Bravo Bravo, and that will hook into the steering column of the F350 and the Allison, and it's plenty long. I'll probably end up having to try to make a loop to get rid of some of the extra. Alright, so to get the dipstick to work, I tried bending up the metal line. I got one out of a Duramax Allison, and it didn't go very well. It ended up getting kinked, and it just doesn't bend very easy. So what I ended up using was this flex tubing, and it worked really well. So what I did was I got it all set, figured out the length, and then set the bend on it, like set it where it needed to be, and then pulled it out of the transmission, and then matched up the length of the dipstick. So before I cut the metal one up, the metal dipstick tube, I checked to see where the end of the dipstick was, how much it was protruding out the end, and then when I set the length of this pipe here, I can basically adjust how much of the end of the dipstick is sticking out. So I got it positioned exactly how it is. If it's straight, it sticks out way too far, but the way it's bent, it sticks out the exact same amount as if it was in that metal tube. Alright, so most of the work with this was getting this transfer case made it up to the transmission. So the Allison 2000, you're going to be hard pressed to find that in a two-wheel drive version. However, it's the exact same tail housing as what's in the Allison 1000 that comes in the Chevy Duramax combination. And so that's what I did. I actually found someone interested in swapping tail housings because they needed a two-wheel drive tail housing. So I unbolted it and sent them all the parts, and they sent me their parts, and it was really easy to install, zero drama, and the only modification I really had to do was to add this sensor to the tail housing, because in the Chevys and in the two-wheel drive version, it's in the tail, the sensor's in the tail housing. In the Chevys, it is it's mounted in the tail housing of the transfer case. So so I had to do a little modification here, and what I did, I had a void similar to what's here. I cleaned it out real good, scraped it down to bare metal, roughed it up, and then filled that void with JB Weld, and inserted a big nut with barbs on the outside. It was made to be set into like resin, um, and then drilled the hole down to put the sensor through, set the depth, and that's it. I mean, it seems to work pretty well. I will give the disclaimer though that none of this is tested. It's all theoretical at this point. It should work. I've set the gap between the reluctor wheel and the sensor. The sensor's clocked in the right direction because that's important too. How the sensor's clocked is important to how it functions. All these sensors are clocked a little differently, and in looking through the Allison manual, I found out that was important. So the reluctor wheel that I used was from an NP243. It's a GM part, part number 352531. And I did have to modify that. I had to put it on a lathe and turn the inside diameter, make it wider so that it would fit over the input shaft of the transfer case. And if there's more interest in this, I can try to present the pictures. I took pictures of all this. It was well documented on Facebook when the censorship started on Facebook. I got off Facebook, and it was taking up too much time in my life anyway, so I was ready to have Facebook out of my life. But all that information kind of disappeared. So if there's interest in these parts and how I did it, I can post more about that. Just kind of post in the comments section if it's something you're interested in. The input shaft for the transfer case, this is the stock MP273, same as an MP271, but with the electronic shift on the fly. The input shaft had to be changed. I think it was like a 27 tooth before, and the Allison is a 29 tooth output shaft. So the input shaft had to be changed to, I think it's a Dodge part number. It is part number 271273. And it was not too difficult to change. You'll want to make sure that you get the pocket bearing that goes with that input shaft, and because that's one thing that'll change when you swap over. And so that reluctor wheel, I turned, and it fits over the snout of that input shaft, and then rides right in the right underneath where that sensor is. It should work. The gap is set the same, but like I said, it's still theoretical. Everything else was pretty simple. I had a couple inches taken off the rear drive shaft and a couple inches added to the front. I think it was something like 4 inches, and that was pretty painless. The machine work that is needed for the reluctor wheel, that would be real simple for a machinist to do if you bring them both parts. I don't think it would end up being all that expensive. Pause real quick and add an addendum here. I forgot to talk about the clocking ring. That is just a standard clocking ring that I got off eBay. It doesn't have a particular part number, but it is just for the MP271 and MP273. Just look up a clocking ring and you'll see it there. It did require just a little bit of a rotation to get it to clear the frame rail. And I think that's about it. I mean, I talked about the cross member in a different video. There were no tricks to mounting the transmission. I did change the seals for the torque converter because it's easy to damage those, and so I didn't have to tear it apart again. But other than that, I mean, it's a heavy transmission. Make sure you have a jack or a hoist or something to support it. and I don't know. We'll see. It does work. When I start the motor, I can shift through the gears. With an Allison, you don't necessarily need it hooked up to electricity to use it. It has a non-powered limp mode. You'll have reverse and third gear, which is enough to move it around just with the torque of the torque converter. And that's the plan, is to pull it out soon, take it from this bay and put it in the bay with the lift, and get the cab back down over the engine, and I'll make a video about how that goes, and how it fits. If you guys are real interested in seeing the process of dropping the cab, I can do that. It's not very exciting. Just a lot of down a little bit, check, make sure everything's okay, and then down a little bit more. But if you guys are interested in seeing that, just let me know. And yeah, that'll be the next step. I'm hoping that's the last time I have to drop the cab on this. With that, I hope y'all have a good weekend.